How's the family?
Thank you for joining us for MOCs in Motion with Joe Dorsey and guest host David Kravitz from Unilug. Here they are, Joe Dorsey.
Thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. I feel like we should have had a mic drop out of the ceiling for that one.
Right? Just boom, hits the table, all the brick goes
Let's
everywhere.
get ready to build.
Rumble.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate you joining us for, what are we at, week 3, week 4? How many of these we've
Technically,
got?
it's 4.1.
4.1. All right,
Yeah, we
perfect.
were trying to do it on Tuesday, but that didn't work for anybody, so we just deleted the whole thing.
Oh, gotcha. Well,
Plus,
sorry.
my mic wasn't on for the other half, so it was like, delete it.
Yeah, I had some work stuff going on and some other things, so I wasn't able to join. Had some things I had to attend to. So Lego is great, but unfortunately it does not pay the bills. So had to do the pay the bills part so I could buy more Lego. But anyway, what we're going to do today is just kind of dink around with some parts here, see if we can come up with some mechanisms and show off some things. So I challenged David. I didn't even tell him what to build. I said, "What are you going to build?" So what are you going to build?
I don't know.
He doesn't know.
Kind of curious.
That's the best part, is not knowing. I pulled out one of my little cheater books and pulled out a few mechanisms and things like that. So I thought we could kind of fiddle around and kind of see what we got going on and give everybody an opportunity as well to, if you're watching on the live stream, you can type down in the comments below, throw out a challenge to us, see if we can figure it out. Don't make it too crazy because we only got about an hour worth of building to do here. But you can we'll review some of the other things that we've done over the past few weeks, and we'll take a look at some of the other stuff, and then figured we kind of maybe do some stuff with linkages. That'd be kind of fun. We'll kind of show like a flapping motion. I was watching one of the Lego Masters from Australia, and they had a flapping motion bird, and then they also had a couple of planes on some parallel bars.
Yeah.
So I was going to kind of show how those work and how you would incorporate that into your build and what's important about that. So I think linkages would be a good thing to go over. We'll go over some more gearing, and then if time allows, depending on the questions that we get, maybe we'll make a little shooting mechanism or something like that. We'll shoot some studs across the room.
That sounds awesome.
Cool. All right. So why don't you show them some of the things that we've done before?
So to reintroduce you guys,
Here, I'll move the parts out of the way.
this is to show off how the worm gear can work with different sizes of other gears, such as this big one here. So when we went over this, we had like a little chain. So if you rotate this bar here will rotate with the chain, pulling it up or lowering it down. So depending on how big the gear is here to the worm gear is how quick the rotation will go, how quick you could pull something up, lower it down, or, if you incorporate this into another build, it could be, maybe it could be an elevator, or maybe it could be like the back of a truck lowering, like a cab or something. So we could do something like that. This we've shown off, which is our 2-speed transmission. So you can go from one to another. And if you could tell, it's going to be slightly slower rotation than the other one. See how quick this rotates? Then you switch gears, it's slightly slower. So that's our little 2-speed gear shift.
Moving to the 4-speed.
Yeah, the 4-speed is really cool. This is so you can switch the gears. So, slid out of place.
Yeah, we don't have a housing around it. It's just
so it
put
kinda
together.
Just like. All right. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna have to hold this a certain way. So you can see if I turn this red Technic / axle pin, rotates here, but then if you shift this another way, let me see.
There you go.
There we go. See how the other gears are turning?
So it's going to change the ratio from the input to the output so you can increase your torque, right?
So then you move this, and you can tell that some of the gears are moving different. Their sync is switched up.
Mm-hmm. They're all meshed together, so they counter rotate to each other.
Right.
You're right.
So you can see as we do it, what's rotating and what's not. I'm not trying to whip it around, But if you turn this one here, it's going to rotate things differently than what you do with the red one. And then, switch it. It's just there's no frame connecting anything, so this just slides off. So that was another one we've shown off, and then this is our little
rack and pinion. Super simple rack and pinion.
This is a way for you to rotate left and right. This should be pinned in here, actually.
Yep. You need a long
an axle.
There you go.
There we go. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. There we go. So now we can shift it back and forth. And as we talked about too, it's got to be different from left and right because depending on how you're turning, the other wheel on the inside is going to turn less than the one on the outside.
Yeah, so that's a good one because the wheels are not on the same axle, so they can rotate independent of each other. If you were having them on the same axle, you'd need to use a differential, something like that.
Right. And this one's really fun to mess with because you could turn it this way, and all the little gears inside will spin. But then, if you just rotate the big one, then only 2 of the small ones are going to actually move while the big one is turning.
Yeah, it allows.
So this little one here is going to hold in place, but then if you hold it a different way, all those gears are going to spin because the axle is being moved instead of just the gear around it. And this axle here is the one we showed you with the lip. So it helps to kind of hold things in place and stop it. And then if you extend it out, we have another little stopper here because the lines here for this axle bar doesn't go all the way through because they have that stopper there too. So that works really well for this. So you can see little gears here where you could hold it, rotate the big one, and then 2 of the gears are spinning. There we go.
Cool. And then we did just a quick one. We showed them how to use the bevel gears. This is the old style bevel gear to get movement in different directions. So you can also use setups like these with the newer bevel gears. They give you a lot of variety. You can even use the larger, the 36 too. You can use a lot of different parts to do that. So let's go ahead and show them. Let's do like a little reciprocating build so they can kind of show repeating motion. So how do you turn the rotational motion into a linear motion?
Okay.
Why don't we just do a quick little setup? We'll show them how to do that. Okay, perfect. So right in there. So that's where we'll kind of place everything together.
Okay. So we need a
Right.
frame.
Yeah, so let's just do a really quick and dirty little frame here. Keep it super simple. And let's kind of show them some different things that they can do. So you can take something super simple and not that one. I need something a little bit longer for an axle. Let's see. There's something like that will work. Perfect.
There's this one here too.
So let's say we have something like this, where we've got rotation, but we need it to reciprocate on the outside of that. So we can build up a really quick, easy little way to do that. What we're going to do is use just some perpendicular pins here. And actually, let's not do that one because that one's going to make it more complicated. Let's use this guy here and one of these. All right, and so let's feed it out a little bit further from the wall. We'll put it on another pin. Boom, and boom.
2 black pins. And then
Yeah, just so it's not sticking right up against the wall. All right, so we'll do something kind of like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a really simple mechanism here with some perpendicular axle joiners to give us some movement out of that center gear. So go ahead and line this up with that yellow just so that they're there together.
On both sides?
No, both on the same side, but make sure the holes line up because you can offset the holes on those. So
right, because there's a line in the center. So what he means is this line that's kind of cut in here where the axle is fed through as such. If you put it on another one a different way, the holes are not going to line up. So that they put that line in there to help you line it up that way.
Yeah. So I make sure that we can put them together, and that'll give us our rotational points.
Especially if you're using strings or something too, it helps kind of hold it in there.
Yeah. All right. So then we're going to just take a little guy like this, and we're going to feed through our axle in through here. So we'll feed that through there. And super simple way that we can turn our rotational energy into linear energy.
Almost like how small trains work.
Yeah, very similar. So this is great, except for if you're noticing, we have more than one motion going on here. So we want to get rid of that. So any ideas how we could get rid of, see how this is not only going in and out, but it's coming up and down in its motion?
Okay. So you want to lock this in place while this is spinning?
Let's try that. What do you think will happen when we do that?
So instead of that far end moving.
So we go ahead and we do something like this and we don't allow for it to move anymore. We're going to run into a giant problem.
Right. It's going to like lock.
Yeah, it's going to lock.
Right. Because
it's moving in 2 axes. So what's a way that we could get it to just move in 1 axis? Any ideas?
Let's see. Yeah, see, I feel like we put the axle in there and this is moving way more than the pin axle.
Yeah.
So
we're going to need another point of motion. We need another point that can articulate within our build.
Right.
So if we incorporate a CV joint or a way where the axle is not directly connected all the way out, we'll be able to do both of those. So let's see here. Instead, let's use that.
Okay.
And nope, not on that side. We want it on the other end. So we need a couple of axle joiners. They're little short, stubby ones. So there's one. So go ahead and put our CV joint here on this one.
Oh, I see. So you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Aha.
See what we got going on there?
Mm-hmm. Do you still want this to be the axle? Do you want this to be the pin axle?
So we can switch this one back out. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to pull that out completely. And let's see if we've got the components to be able to just do a joiner. So let's do this number. So we'll have it here, and then we'll put a couple of axles through there. Check this out. Boom. And let's get another one of those.
You want this to be fed in?
Yeah, so check this out. So we're going to feed both of those through. So now we have we're going to need to make sure that those don't rotate around each other. To do that, we're going to use just a 2 long half beam, and all those 2 long half beams have the axles on them, so that'll make it nice and easy. So we'll throw one of those on this
on the back
side.
half.
Yeah, if you want to
lock it.
Yep. So now those are put there together. And then we're going to have to give ourselves a little bit more space. So check this out here. So now we've got that.
All right. So now when we rotate this.
So now we still have our linear motion, but we're not getting that up and down motion because it's not attached directly.
Right. And given that
axle.
this works as another joint, essentially like your fingers, it's helping to slow down the rotation, but have more control.
Exactly. So essentially, remember the same problem we were having when we did our little flappy part and we had to use these ball joints? That's the same reason that we're using the CV joint in this build here. So that'll add all that together. So pretty simple mechanism, pretty easy to kind of get the idea of. And you see the difference. Whenever we had one point of articulation, we were getting an arc at the end of our axle as well. But now that we've put another joint in there, and it probably would be better if we line this up one higher. That'll get rid of that wiggle that we're getting right now because it's out of line. Bloop, bloop. I bet you this will run even smoother because we won't have quite as far. Yeah, there we go. And I'm getting almost 2 whole studs worth of motion at the end here. So say this is exactly what happens inside of a regular combustion engine. You have the piston, it's rotating around a cam that's off-centered. So the piston moves up and down, but the rotational energy is transferred in an elliptical motion. What do you think? Think you incorporate that into a build?
Yeah, this would be cool. So for those of you who are fans of trains, they use this for old locomotives for how the wheels rotate and everything. So they're essentially in sync.
Mhm.
So that way, as it's pulling however amount of cars or weight, it'll help control it. Plus, if you're going on certain turns at a right speed or wrong speed, it'll help too. Just like if you're driving a vehicle.
Yep. All right. Want to do another one?
Yeah, let's do
All right,
another
let's
one.
do another one. All right. So for this one, we'll go ahead and we'll start with one of these guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to throw on a series of gears here.
Okay.
So we need one of them, two of them. We're going to use our frictionless pins here, the tan ones, or they might be light gray, like this guy here.
Yeah, the light bluish gray ones were the older ones, and then they created the tan ones, correct?
Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves, where's our little build we did? We need those parts. We're going to just rob some of the tidbits off of this guy here.
Do you want these at both ends, or do you want them like
So we
one
want to
after
make,
another?
we're going to make a long chain of these. These are all the same gear variant to each other, which is kind of nice. So let's say if we start there, then we'll line everything up off of that one.
For 1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-to-1. So I got 1-to-1 on that side, 1-to-1 on that side. And then actually on these, let's not use that. And let's use these bad mamma jammas here, because that'll give us a point of anchor on the other side.
So it's not swaying back and forth.
Yeah, so it's got something attached on the outside of it, and that's where we're going to start to attach all the build to.
There we go.
So we'll do it on that side, and then let's do the same thing on the far side.
For the other one.
Yep. Go ahead and pop that one on there,
Okay.
and I'm going to.
So now you can see as I turn the innard. Yeah, see, that's why we got to link them.
Yeah, so put this guy. Let's use the bush on the back end. This will kind of be like our input. Okay.
All right.
So the reason that I did this is because I'm getting now the same rotation. Remember, when you use an odd number of gears, you get counter rotation. When you use an even number of gears, you get synchronized rotation. Oops, sorry, hit my mic.
Do you want these both to be lined up, or do you want them to be lined up, lined down?
So let's take a look here. Let's go the same, just for giggles. And we'll line these up this way. Ba-doom. Oh, I'm off center just a little bit. There. Close enough. Okay, so here's the start of our mechanism. So we're going to use the same kind of principle that we did before, and let's kind of make some linkages out from there, and we'll get some flapping rotation on the outside.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Easy enough? What's that?
A bud.
Like a little bird? Yeah, perfect.
Tweet.
All right, so let's start off with you put some big honking parts on there. So
Okay.
let's do some of these guys. Boom.
So as you guys are building those, I would say I have a question for you guys. Mr. Joe, what is your favorite Technic build that you've built so far?
That I have done so far, I have to say 8255 is a pneumatic backhoe from late 90s. No, it's probably early 2000, like 2003, 2004. I really like it because it has 10 pneumatic cylinders in that build, and everything runs on pneumatic, so you can control the front arm, lift, tilt, dig, and then in the back arm, it's got the connectors that actually come and plant down into the ground. So it's got a pneumatic cylinder for each of those, and then you can swivel and 3 articulation points on the back claw. So that one is super fun because it's different in that the hardest part of the build is figuring out what hose goes to what input and output, and figuring out all that. And you only work it in gray and gray.
In gray?
And gray.
It's not even yellow?
So that's my favorite old build. I have to say I really enjoyed the Lieberman, the newer build. So that one just came out this last year. It uses the Control Plus, and that is just a massive set. That's over 4,000 parts. I think it's got 7 motors built into it.
Right, and we
It's
all
got
kind of pitched in to build
a
that.
lot of stuff going on. So
Yeah.
the Lieberman's one of my favorites. If you ever get a chance to build one of those, I would recommend it just because it uses so many techniques. You're using everything that we're doing here in that build in one way or another. It's got a lot of linear actuators. It does not have pneumatics. That's the only thing in that set that's not there. If you want something that's got a good mix between the two, pneumatics and the linear actuators, the Arcos build, 4207 something or other, that one's a really fun build because it has a pneumatic claw, but all the rest of the mechanisms are set up with the traditional gearing.
Okay. So I got the 2 pins in here.
All
Is
right,
that
so
where you
we'll go
wanted
ahead and
them?
put those on the endpoints. Boom, boom. And now, given if you were going to make this on your own, you would probably spend a little bit more time planning everything out and where it needs to go in your build. We're just doing something really quick and simple here. All right, so we're going to take that guy there and take another
He's
one
here.
guy there. Yeah. And we're going to run into a little bit of a problem in that these are extending out a little too far for our build, but that's okay. They've got the stoppers on them. What we need to do is we're going to want to decrease the link that's sticking out here, because what we're going to do is we're going to use these guys here to attach some lift arms to the outside.
Do you have the
There are probably
bushings?
Yeah, we have some bushings over here.
Do you want the full ones or the half bushings?
Probably use the halves. There's more halves than holes. So there's a
Okay.
couple more there for you.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this axle out.
And then I'm going to look for another half pin without friction. So we're going to need one of those to attach that to our little mechanism here. And it, oh, okay, gotcha. No problem. Which one's 3? This guy over here? Yep. All right, perfect. So I will try to make some
I got to
eye
make
contact.
sure I got to line this up right. Hold on.
So David, what about you? What out of the you've been working here for over 2 years now? What's one of your favorite Technic builds that you got to work on so far?
Ooh.
You're not a big Technic person, but I figured
Everybody
we'd have to throw it
loves
out
Technic.
Don't get me wrong. No, I like Technic. I really do. Well, I got to help Joe build the Lieberman, which was a lot of fun, honestly. Very different. I mean, that was one of the most complex sets I've had to build.
Yeah, it's got
Ryan,
a
I
lot.
think I helped you with 1 or 2 of your Technic cars. I think the Lamborghini or
The Porsche.
the
You know, he's
orange
got
one, right?
He's got the orange Porsche floating around in there somewhere.
Right.
That one's got a nice transmission built into it. The all 4 independent suspension, and it's got the steering mechanism.
So I don't know what my favorite Technic would be, because I've only done a few things.
What about some of the older Star Wars Technic sets? Have you ever had a chance to do any of those? Like Droidicas and
Well, no, I had I think it was an old UCS Droidica. I had to rebuild that. That was
isn't that cool how they used all that?
it was
Technic?
rough. It was rough because some of it doesn't line up properly.
I've built and rebuilt that set probably 3 or 4 times, and I've only got it to work maybe twice.
So I built that one. I had to rebuild the Jango Fett Technic build, and then the little like mechanic droid, the one where you tap its nose and it springs up. So I don't know if I have a favorite Technic build, because I've only done a handful of Technic sets over time. So yeah, I don't really know if I have a favorite. That's kind of hard.
It's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah.
Or maybe not that difficult.
It's like picking my favorite base Lego set. I don't know.
I would say right now we might actually be acquiring 2 of the Technic Bugattis in the next 2 or 3 days, hopefully.
Very
So
cool.
if we can get those at a certain price, one might be coming home with me to sit next to my Porsche and my
I
Le
wanna
Mans
work-
car.
That's the blue one, right? The
That
black
That is the
and
blue Bugatti Chiron. Yes.
I wanna mess with that one, because I've seen people build.
Let's go. Yeah.
So what they've done, I've seen people do, is they'll build like a box frame,
Mhm.
and they'll place the car on top, but they have it rigged up where you literally could test drive the car.
Yeah.
So they have wheels interlocking with one another,
Mhm.
gears rotating, and they have like 4 motors in to rotate it up to a certain speed. And then with the new controls, you could switch the speed, so it's like slow, fast, or medium. And so I've seen that somebody took that set and they built a huge box frame. The car sits on top.
It's like a big dyno.
Yeah, it sits on top, and then you could see how all the car rotates with the wheels and stuff. So I think that is really cool. And honestly, I think that's one of my favorite looking and built cars is that set, because I've seen a lot of people like build it and tweak it and stuff. So I personally really like that one. I think it's a really good car in general. So the fact that Lego created it as a set and then built a huge version, a real life version out of Lego. That one's pretty cool too.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to watch the how they did it kind of thing on that build.
Well, because it's a metal frame
Yep.
that they house it on.
But
and
the
then
way that they
build
did the
out.
body, it's all flexible. So that way they could use a little tool.
And it could only go,
and adjust it.
I think it was like 20 or 30 miles per hour it could go.
That's still pretty quick.
Yeah, considering the size they made it and the amount of parts they're using. I mean, they're using tons of these beams and axles and
it's got
pins.
like 800 little 12 volt, or the 9 volt motors in it. So it's got a lot going on.
Extremely powerful.
I know I kind of threw you under the bus there on the build here, so I'm going to help out a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying to line up the gears because I took out the axle, so I had to make sure that these two were kind of lined up. Otherwise, it's going to be like,
yeah, and we'll have to adjust that here in a second.
wacky, wavy, inflatable arc plating.
Yeah,
too bad.
wacky. All right, so here we go. So here's our super simple, tiny little mechanism here. So what I've got here, we have synchronous gears all on the back side.
So it's 1 to 1 to 1 to 1.
Yeah, it's all the
1
same.
to 4,
and we used
essentially.
an even number of gears. That way we've got the same rotation out of both sides, okay? Oh, we still need a little bit more room. So we've run into a problem where our beam is hitting. So we're going to have to stick it out one more stud. So I'm going to go right there to the end. Boom. And boom.
Right, and you're making sure the beams are lined up so we have an equal motion of the wings flapping or the parts rotating a properly way.
Yeah, because we want it to be somewhat synchronized in its movement, right?
Synchronization.
All right, so what we're going to do here, let's see. We got to line up so when this is there, so this one's on the 90-degree plane, then this one should be on the 90-degree plane, but this one's flipped the other way.
All this talk about angles.
There we go. So, whoa, what's going on? What's our problem? What did we do,
I think you guys have a problem there.
Yeah, what do you think we did wrong?
These aren't lined up properly. Probably when I was messing with this, these are not on a proper rotation. That's probably the problem.
Well, I think what's going on is that because we putting this so close to each other, what we're getting is the backlash from the parts because they're wanting to fall out of sync. Yeah, that's what we got going on. So we're getting no, that's not what's going on. I see what it is now. Okay, the length of this arm is too short because it can only achieve half of the rotation before it's bottomed out, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
This can't stretch any further than that.
So this pin needs to be the half pin.
No, it's not the pin, it's the connection point between these. So we need to use something that is longer in between this in order to get all of our rotation out of it.
That's a 3?
So that's a 3. They only come in
3, 5.
Yep. So we're let's stick it up to a 5.
Yeah, I got a 5 right here.
We kind of like limited ourselves because we built it so close together. Boom. But we can still make something happen with this thing.
Should the other side be a 5 too then?
Yes, exactly. So we're gonna need a couple of those.
Dave, that's a brilliant question. Should the other side be a 5-2? Why now, Joe, why would both sides need to be 5s?
Because they're mirroring each other. So if it can't rotate on one, if it's going around the same radius of the next gear, it's gonna get caught up on that. So we're gonna need on both sides. Boom, boom. All right. So
we were talking about synchronization earlier, correct?
Right.
So in order to have synchronization in most builds, you have to have symmetry
both sides
on both sides.
Need to be exact.
Relatively, because there is a way to get away with it,
yes.
as Joe knows, with different gear ratios and all sorts of things. One side could be a 1-to-1, and one side could be like a 1-to-2 with a 2-to-1 on the other side. It'll still work, but
all right. So there we go. Now we've got something that's going to work here for us, and we did 3 points of contact from there. So do we find another 5 long?
Yeah, I got one right here for
perfect.
you.
All right, so we're going to use that guy.
And if any of you are watching at home and have any questions at all, please feel free to ask in the stream. There's also a link as well. If you'd like to join us live, you can be here on video and talk to the guys yourself.
Right, so we got that lined up.
Yeah, we want to hear from everybody. I mean, it's been kind of dead lately with the stream and everybody watching or not watching. And
yeah, if you want to see something particular, all you got to do is ask, man.
Yeah, like...
Otherwise, we're just going to do things that we think are kind of fun with the parts that we see on the table.
What else are you guys going to do at home, huh? Like, if you guys are doing a lot of Lego at home, building a lot with Lego at home, like,
so
how are we supposed to know?
So pretty relatively simple. We've got our mechanism all put together here. So we have the 4 gears that are all meshed together. On the outside, we have a point of rotation that's further away from the axle. So in this case, we're about a stud away. We've got a 5 link arm, and then we've got some space in between here. Both of these are even number apart from each other, so they're going to spin.
Same direction.
Yep.
Yeah, relatively the same direction.
So
they
there
go
we go.
in, then out, in, then out. Therefore, these beams here on the outside are going to move like this.
And we're a little offset from each other. Look at there. So we need to readjust where we have our anchor points in our build. So
right. Otherwise, you're like,
yeah. So we're kind of one's up and one's down. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just maneuver this guy out of the way.
So Joe, we do have a couple questions from the audience. So more of a comment, I guess, for one. In order to line it up, could you use those lines in the middle of the pulleys to line up?
Yes,
synchronization.
So they will, because the orientation. You get 3 on top, 3 on bottom, but you can put this in at 90 degrees to that, and it'll change the orientation so that this, see how the non-grooves part is pointing directly at the center of the pinhole, whereas this perpendicular is in the middle of the gear. So yes, you can line them both up by kind of using the cheater gear there. So now we should have the same motion out of both sides.
Hey, now second question is, how would you get more motion out of those longer lift arms if you wanted to get a wider,
so if you wanted a wider arc, you would need to change up where the anchor point is in those. So let's actually do that right now. Let's take and let's just bulk up the sides here a little bit. So I'm going to make a couple of longer arms. And what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect that there. And we're going to put that on there. We'll do the same thing on the other side.
What length is that?
That's a 7. So here's another one.
7 with 2 black pins?
Yes. Here's a couple of pins. We want to stick those on.
So they're going to go on the end here, and then you're going to lock them into place at the end.
Perfect.
So now the length is going to be wider. Therefore, connecting these can be a little different. Like these can go wider. So you flipped it, right?
Yeah. So let's play around. Don't leave that one out. And we're going to play around with it a little bit and kind of show what's changing here. So let's get this lined up so we're on the same axis here. So we got that guy there. And then we want this at the top dead center point, which is there. All right. And then what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 holes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. On this one, I'm going to go one more. I'm going to go 5.
So to show the difference.
They're a little bit off from each other. Okay. So this side and that side are not lined up as far as like how they're put together. And then I'm going to just push those through. Again, in your build, you're going to take a little more time to put it all together here. All right, so we have uneven bars as far as the spacing in between of each of these. So as we rotate it, let's kind of observe what happens to...
So it's 5, 7, and 11? Or...
Oh, this one's come out of socket.
Or 13, I think.
This needs to go up. There we go. All right, so what's different? What are we getting different-wise? I'm going to put it on this plane so we can see what's going on as well. So the shorter one seems to be moving quicker, but it's not going as far. So this side over here compared to that side over there. Let's make it even more dramatic. Let's go really short. Okay. Well, that may be too short.
It's like that's too short. Broken wing.
Yeah. So let's see. That one I think is the most we can do. Okay. Oh, still can't. So 4 is our shortest. So let's go even more dramatic and we'll go way on the other end of things. All right. So hypothesis, before I turn, what do you think is going to happen?
Compared to both sides?
Yeah. So this one's the same.
Right.
Whereas this one is much further off. So
this is going to have a closer point of both these ends.
So what's going to happen to, what is this going to do versus that side?
This is going to come in more. This is just going to rotate a little bit. This one almost is going to come in.
All right, let's try it out and see what we get.
Yeah.
The exact opposite. We're almost getting no movement on it. But in theory, what would this be good for? Why would this be a good alternative? Say over here we have a giant thing that we're trying to move. It's got a lot, like a whole Lego set.
Like an arm or
yeah,
something?
we have a battery box. We have something really heavy on this end versus this end. Because our fulcrum point is longer on this end than this end, we're actually going to be amplifying our torque. So with us having it shorter on this end, longer on this end of the fulcrum,
There's more force.
yeah, we'd be able to lift a lot more weight. So again, just like in the gearing, right? You're reducing the speed of your output, but you're amplifying the torque, the power.
Mhm.
We're doing the same thing with this. So on this one, you get a lot more movement. It's going a lot further, but this one could not sustain as much force. Whereas this guy over here,
Right, because there's a closer point of connection here. Therefore, it can brace itself
Mhm.
essentially.
So in the way that we've set ourselves up, this is the most movement we could get out of the linkages that we have here. If we were able to kind of build this out so it was on the same plane, and we can attach the fulcrum even closer to this end. So the closer we're getting to the point of rotation, you're going to get more movement out here on the wings. As opposed to over here, we have it as far away, well, almost as far away as we can. So we get a little bit of movement over here. But the amount of force that we could apply over here, we're going to be able to move a lot more weight. So that would be the advantages of something like this. So if you're wanting more motion, let's see. I think we can go in a few more if we attach it even closer. Let's give that a shot. So we're going to go like maximum amount. I think that in this build, that's going to be about as close as we can get. So in this one, I'm going to have the most movement, which is probably about, I'd say 6 studs or so. And something else that you could do with your build, you could start adding on, and rather than this being your point of motion, you could add linkages here, and you could get some flapping motion to go out towards, especially using parallel arms. So we talked about that like really quickly, but let's revisit that point. I'll leave that one out there. You guys can play around with that for a second. I want to revisit that point one more time about parallel versus unparallel and why that's important. I'm not going to use the correct parts, the friction parts, because I want what we build here to kind of stay in place. But you'll get the idea of what we got going on here. And let's do this. So I'm going to set up parallel bars versus unparallel. So in this build here, we have some parallel bars. Oh, hold on, but they're unequal lengths.
Right, you got to make it.
We got to use the same lengths here. So we'll go 4 apart, boom, and boom. Okay. So a very kind of simple principle to understand here, but it's going to help you out. Okay, these bars are the same length and they are parallel to each other. As I rotate them around, the angle, this 90-degree angle, is going to remain in place as far as the amount of angle compared to the table. So as I move it down, it stays even width. Okay? So one of the things that, like in a forklift or in a backhoe or something like that, what you're going to do, you get this motion so you can lift and lower the bucket, but you need to lengthen or shorten one of the arms in order to get the angle to move. Or
To dip.
Yeah, to dip and to increase. So that's where these guys come into play. So the linear actuator. So we plug in a linear actuator, we can not only control the rise and lower of the mechanism, but then we would also be able to, essentially what we're doing is we're changing the point of rotation from being here at this to changing it over to this, to just the one. So essentially I can do the same thing by changing and holding it here and allowing this to pivot.
Yeah, so what'll that'll do is like where I could do this.
Yes. So you would be able to lower, and then now I'm changing the point to dig.
Right.
And then I'm changing the point to raise. Okay, so having that in that way is how you're going to kind of achieve the motion that you're wanting to do.
And that, for those of you at home that are watching, that style of build is very reminiscent of the little sand diggers and stuff like that at parks that you see a lot of times.
Exactly.
Little shovel diggers.
Yep. So you have 2 different points where you can articulate it. So you're not only able to move here, but then you can just change it to moving here.
Right, and it's a lift system.
Mhm.
So really, you could use this idea for a lot of things. Like our buddy Peter, he made an elevator. So using this same concept, this will also raise you to another floor, lower you to another floor, because this is where the person or item would be. So then you could just up, top floor, down floor, bottom floor, whatever you want to do.
Whatever you got going on at that particular time, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's what's cool about this too, this little lift arm system. And being that it's using 2 beams, it's helping control what's on here. Plus, the more beams you're using too for this kind of idea helps with the weight control.
The only downside of that is you couldn't use that for an elevator because that straight across is going to come out forwards.
Well, what I'm saying is like, because say there was a building right here and you're trying to get bottom floor, top floor. This doesn't have to go closer. It could stay right here and then you just step off.
Potentially.
Yeah.
I was just saying for an elevator use, it can't, because of how it's built, you can't travel straight up
For
and down.
this concept, an elevator is not going to work for this. But this still works as a lift system. So if it was bigger, if there were more beams connected, it could help create more strength to lift up something. Almost like, say you're trying to lift up a car or something. This whole concept here can do so.
I'm just setting up a little mock here, so
Yep.
kind of show that principle in action. Just gonna make sure I get it centered far enough apart from each other. All right, so built some uneven bars, so to speak, here with a couple of different. You know what I need to do is, do we have a frictionless pin? Boom. Gray pin, where are you? Do we use them all in our other build? No.
Yeah. A 2-length pin?
Yep, just a 2-length pin.
Let me see if I can get one.
Actually, hold on. You know what? We can use a 3-length and I'll just have it sticking out the other end. That'll work just fine.
So the blue one or
Yeah.
black works too.
So we're going to go something like this. Okay. And then just a really simple guy like that and a guy like that. So we can play around a little bit with our geometry here. So building just something simple like this can kind of let you see what we've got going on and what we're working with here. So if I change the lengths here and say I want to go closer. Now your physical limitation is just how far can it move as far as the parts that I'm using. And if you get to the extremes, you might run into a point where it's no longer going to work because you're applying too much force to it. So I've got my motion here and I can kind of see what's going on. Now, if I change the fulcrum on this end and I shorten that up, I'm going to be continually changing what's going on. And you'll see this a lot of times in kinetic sculptures. Well, they'll have a path like for a foot stepping. So you'll have it where it's ellipsis here, then the foot comes up forward and draws back down. And the way that they're achieving that is by using these uneven arms. And by changing the geometry between your anchor points, you're going to be able to get a lot of different motion out of that. So even in one stud movement, I'm able to really change the motion that's coming out of it. So that one doesn't work so well. Let's try.
Showing the differences between like short and...
Yeah, so you can make things that are not rotationary. Like this does not move in a complete circle. This is turning in a circle, right? This is linked and all locked together.
But the top here, because of the way it's set up.
Mm-hmm. So if we just kind of put something up here just so you can kind of identify what you're seeing here. If you look at the arc of that movement, it's very, very different. Put some color on there just so you can see it. So as I rotate it around, whoop, I put on the wrong axle. As it's moving around, I did it again. All these black parts. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. So as it's moving through its arc,
No backup singers.
it's not parallel to itself, right? It's kind of taking a weird shape. And that's because I've allowed movement in this direction. If we go back to our other build where I have the piston not in line and I'm allowing it to not only come up and down but move. That's how you would get that movement that you would see in like those kinetic sculptures. And
That was the
books
one
like
we
that.
tore apart with this arm here.
Yeah, we can do it here again real quick. We'll just use this guy here and this guy here, and we'll plug on one of those. So taking that out and putting that back in. This may be a little too aggressive. Need a little longer axle. Here we go. Boom, something like that. Now see, when I'm down, that's way too far away. There we go. So I could use something set up like this to be able to get the angles that I'm needing. And I'd have to play around with it, and it depends on what your need is in your particular build. So it's moving up and down, but not only is it doing that, it's also, look at the tip of the axle. Look at the path that it's taking. Okay, let's go extreme.
Go to the extreme.
Big boy, 32 axle.
Holy moly. I got to zoom out for this one.
All right,
Realize
so
can't
let's
even-
do that, and then let's get a point of color up here at the top so you can actually see what's going on here. Boom, and then we'll just throw on something big and massive at the top.
I could say something about that, Joe, but I'm not going to.
PG. All right, there you go. So
Yes.
of course, I picked up a black piece of all the colors that I have on the table. I thought, hey, I'll just pick another.
When
black
we opened the video, Joe said something. He was like quick and dirty. I was like, we are not that kind of show.
All right, so now my fulcrum needs to come out a little bit further. Boom. And boom. All right, so let's say I had something like this, and I had a big old walking mechanism at the top. Notice my motion is not a circle, but it's an ellipsis. See how that part is moving in relation to the table? And then I can change that up even more.
Right, you could lower it. You
Yep. So if I needed it to be lower down, I didn't need that much motion. So at each point on the axle here, it's taking a different path that's going around. So by tinkering around with that, you can change up and get your linkages that you need. And then introducing a third point of motion, something like this, and attaching those, you can get your anchor points where you can have that type of motion going throughout your build. So
That's pretty sweet.
it's it's like easy to explain, hard to master. Like I can tell you why it works the way it does, but in your build, you just got to figure it all out to figure out what is the motion that I need.
Right.
Mhm.
You'll have to, take it apart, put it back together, and figure out like why isn't it reaching this point evenly, but yet when I rotate it this way, it's showing it better on this end.
Right. And it might be, hey, I need to change where my anchor point is here, or maybe I need to change my point of axis and I need it to go down here.
Right.
Or maybe, I'm only working in one plane. Maybe it's a fact that, hey, not only do I need to change the anchor point, but I need to offset it perpendicular in some geometry to the master build. So it might be something where, hey, not only do I need it to be up 6 studs from where I started, but I need it to be over 2 studs as well. So just by doing that, it's going to change the motion. So now I've got a much shorter motion than I did before.
Right, on the top. The
Mhm.
bottom is going to be what it is.
Yeah,
The top
or-
is what we're trying to
Or
match.
if we need to go the other way, it could be something like this.
So now you got a whole thing.
Now I've got
going
a
on.
whole thing. I've got multiple points of motion. Oh, we got a pin stuck in there. Look. There we go. They're elastic, so they're good. So this one, he's not sliding up and down very well because we got too much.
Yeah, he's
friction
more
on
of
it.
like gripping up
Yeah,
against
let's
the
fix
axle.
that. So we don't want that. We want there to be some free movement in there. So now I've got multiple points, and you could play around with this by changing that. I've changed the motion coming out at the end, or I could change it more this direction. And then when it gets even more complicated is when you're introducing parallel or unparalleled arms, because when you do that, you're changing up the motion of the build. Now you can only go so far when you start to lock it together because the parts are not elastic in that way. But even just the difference between putting them parallel and one beam off, you can see the difference. Like here, this beam is parallel to the table, but as I increase it up, it's going to change the degree. So that's parallel. Now I'm going to go one more or one away from parallel. Now look at the angle at the end. It does not quite staying parallel to the table.
Right, because once it gets higher up, this angle is moving up more.
Yep. So, and then this way, it's even more aggressive.
It's almost like when you're walking.
Yep. To a degree, yeah. So if you had a gait in your step as you're kind of like, oh, here, let's picture it like an arm or a foot, right? So as I'm coming, I'm kind of opposite of what I want. So my foot's up in the air when it comes into contact, and then I could go back and forth. So I'd have to have a point of rotation around this pin here. But yeah, I could get
Could you make a mechanical foot to kick a football with that?
Yeah,
a punter?
absolutely. Yeah.
An automatic punter?
Yeah, we could make like a little ratchet mechanism. Remember we did the ratchet mechanism? So we could use something like that, and then we could store up that rotational energy around a spring. And
Like
then
what if you made a
the-
stand with made a little Technic stand for that and made a little punter that could
Yeah,
take a
we
little
just have like a little
Yeah, we
like,
could do that.
like a triangle football, like
Yeah,
a paper
so-
football kicker.
Yeah.
We could totally do that. So as you rotate it around, it draws the foot back. And when it gets to a certain point, it's going to detach the ratchet and then kick it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's more than we have in our time today to do, but that's definitely like a super simple idea. How do you put that all together and figure out the geometry for it? So you need unparalleled arms so that way your foot changes the angle as it comes back. Boom. Okay, so this is not the motion that we need. We want the foot to be coming in. So we're going to change it so it's acute as opposed to obtuse. Boom. Okay. So yeah, you could fiddle around with just this and then adding in some way to store up that energy so that when it came to a point, it hits the cam and releases the spring. So say we had a cam on the end here. Here, let's kind of mock it up a little bit. I'm not going to put all the bits and pieces on it, but
Show all the nooks and crannies.
yeah, we'll just kind of do something simple here. So we have a simple anchor point, and then we had a spring that attached in this fashion down here. Boom. Okay, good. And now we need one long axle to kind of feed through there. Yes. All right. So we're running low on time. All right. So here's just like the outline of how would you put something like that together. So as I'm rotating this around, I'm storing up the energy. I would need a way to attach this here. So rather than it being an axle through a pin, I'm going to have to line up the axles in a way. So as it rotates around, it's storing up the energy in that spring. Once it comes around, it's going to want to push it back out. Boom, boom. So then I could intertwine that cam back out with the linkages, and it will give us the motion that we need there.
Yeah, because right now it looks like this is the knee. So
Yep. So we need a way to
we want to
attach
see
here to
the
here.
foot, not the knee.
Mhm.
Flick
And
out.
both of those are going to have to be a variation of axle and pin because we have rotational energy, but we don't want that to get stuck. We don't want an axle on an axle. So you'd have to figure out what linkages and what degree do I need out. And the further away from the point, the less motion you're going to get, but the stronger the force.
Okay.
So using a lot of the principles that we talked about all together in one build, that would be a simple way as far as like the idea, but a little bit more complex on how do I store the energy? How do I release it
So
quickly?
real quick, before we started this video, you were looking up degrees with some parts. Do you want to talk about that real quick before we
Yeah,
end the
that's kind of like
episode?
one of the things to know that'll help you out a little bit here.
So we got 5, a 1,
We may not have them all
4,
here.
a 6. Here we go.
We
Here we
got
go.
most of them. All right, so
We
this
got
is something that will
4,
help you out
6.
whenever you're completing your builds. I need a 180, which I know there's one on the end of this here. Boom. And so the only one we're missing is the number 3, right? I don't see it.
Right? Was this 1, 2, 3? Yeah, we're missing number 3.
Yeah, that's a 4.
Yeah, 4.
We may not have a 3 on here.
4
But
is
something that will help you out when you're building and connecting things is making circles in Lego can be pretty challenging. but kind of knowing the math behind these axle joiners with pinhole will help you out with that. So you've got here, which is kind of like 0. Like this does not provide you anything but the end point for the pin. You have this guy here, which is a straight through, which is 180 degrees. We're missing the number 3, but that would be in here. We have the number 4, which is going to give you, 112 degrees. So the other end of that is 67. You have this guy here, number 5.
Yeah, I don't see any 3s.
You don't have any 3s on there? I meant to look back at my little chart I made because I can't remember off the top of my head.
Cheat sheet.
Cheat sheet over there, Joe.
I did. I wrote it on the, there we go. Boom, cheat sheet. All right, so number 4 is 45 degrees. Boom. So this one here, so 45, if you have a series of these, you are able to make a circle because you have a degree adding up. So how many of these would you need?
That's how the train tracks are. So
Yeah.
you would need
360 divided by 45.
So that'd be 45 on the acute side or 135 on the obtuse
on
side.
the obtuse side. So depending on the orientation. So if you kind of thought about it as a
If you're all into
this
that
way or that way.
mathematical geometry.
There you go.
You would need 8.
You need 8. Exactly. So if you take 8 of these and join them,
Because this is
to
the
each
same.
other.
This is the same angle as the train tracks, the
Mhm.
turns.
Yep.
So for a whole circle, you need 8,
so if you
And
need to
then
make
you
a
can
hoop,
incorp-
you
right.
could put 8 of these together.
or you can get 4, and then the 2, which would be the straight, creating that whole.
So whatever,
oval.
yeah, and you can use any length of axles as long as you're using the same in between all of them
Right.
as you're adding them together. So that way you could get the varying size of circle, and then you have your 90-degree bend here at the end.
Right. So with the flex track, you can maybe get the 5 in, but the 6 you wouldn't be able to do with the flex track.
Yeah. So that's just something to kind of put on your list whenever you're building and you need to make a particular angle, trying to have an idea of what is it you're trying to achieve. And the reason we were calling them by those numbers is each one of these parts does have a number on them that correlate to their angle. So they were nice enough to give you a cheat sheet here. So this straight 180 is number 2, and this is universal in all the colors. It doesn't change up. So
Right.
the 112 degrees is always going to be the 5. The 6s are 90 degrees. They're always 6s, no matter what the color is.
Right. And
So,
they don't make any other. They don't make a 7. They don't make an 8 because then.
boom,
the
3.
point.
There's one.
Oh, well,
So
there
we
we
did have
go.
one. So now we've got all the variations. We have 0.
Right.
We have 180. We have 22 degrees. We've got 67 degrees. And then the 90 degree.
Right. Yep. And there's no 7s. There's no 8s
Yeah.
because Lego has not made those.
They have not introduced
Angles.
any different angles.
There's no set, no build.
They do line up, which is nice whenever you're kind of, one of the things I'll do in a lot of my builds is try to figure out what is the angle here. And then maybe I've got some hoses or something that's going around and they will line up. So the bent beams or the lift arms do have correlating degrees within the axle joiners.
Right. There was another one too. What the?
So that's kind of what we were going to go through. It's up to you what we do next, guys. So if there's something that you want to see, an idea, something that's going on, let us know so we can kind of come up with a mock for it and put it together. I accept your challenges, see what we can come up with. We may do a little bit of pre-work where we're putting the more complex part together and then show you how to do it at home. So more than interested in hearing what your feedback is and what's something that you've been trying to come up with, or maybe a technical challenge that you've had, kind of put our brains together and see if we can figure out a creative solution for it. So
Yeah, if you guys got a challenge for us, I'm sure Joe and I could build something to show off. I mean,
at least we can show you the mechanism and how to put it together in your build, and given the spatial constraints that you're working with, because we're doing things freehand and we don't have to worry about, oh, hey, this is going to fit inside something that's only 10 studs wide. So this isn't going to work. So we are not working against those kinds of constraints, but that's where it gets really fun and exciting, is when you're like, all right, I've got to do it and I have to do it within this amount of space or with this number of parts, and figuring that part out as well. So that'll help out quite a bit. But anyway, we appreciate you taking some time with us today, going through some of the Technic builds. We'll go through a few more pointers on our next session, and then hopefully we'll have some questions that come through and give us some challenges to work on. Otherwise, we're going to pull in some giant Technic sets and just kind of show those off and some of the mechanisms that are built.
yeah,
in
man,
within
we've been
that.
talking about showing off the Lieberman and how that works. And how-
Yeah, so we can bring that in. We'll take it apart, dismantle it a little bit so you can kind of see the innards of it, how it's all put together and how you control it.
we'll
and
do
go
a
into
little
some of the electronics.
dissection
Yeah.
of it.
It comes apart in somewhat easy a way. So
I think it's
that'll be
like
pretty
4
good.
chunks.
Yeah, there's at least the arm versus the turntables. That's kind
Yeah.
of easy to get
The
apart. After that,
the turntable and the treads is a whole nother
gets to
thing.
be a bit much. But anyway, appreciate you guys joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week and keep on building.
All right. That has been an episode of MOCs in Motion with Joe Dorsey and guest host Dave Kravitz. Please join us next time on our next episode. As Joe said, they're going to be showing off a lot of big Technic sets and taking your questions. We'll have that show announced for you as soon as we get that scheduled and put on the board. Of course, you can join us on Facebook or YouTube Live. We will see you then, and thank you for watching.